All right, guys, so we got some updates coming out of Israel, Syria, Gaza, and the West Bank. So I'm just going to go ahead and start off with the latest here. As wanted fugitive war criminal and Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, is now demanding the, quote, complete demilitarization of southern Syria as Israeli forces continue to push deeper and deeper into this country. And this comes obviously with the background context of the recent overthrow or the toppling of the Assad government inside of Syria. Now, HTS, that effectively took power after Assad fell, they were sort of going above and beyond to try to not get into a conflict with Israel. It looks like basically Israel looked at the landscape. They realized that HTS, the current Syrian de facto government right now, is not going to be able to push back on anything because they don't have the military equipment, they don't have the capacity, they're occupied elsewhere trying to consolidate power after the overthrow of Assad, and so they're going to use this as an opportunity effectively to do what looks like just a massive land grab here. So to get into more specifics of what Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying over the last couple of days, they say here from the Washington Post that he's called for the complete demilitarization of southern Syria in a shock announcement that his defense minister described as a new policy and that appeared to formalize Israel's recent expansion into Syrian territory. I mean, it's interesting framing here, right? Expansion into Syrian territory. So it's an illegal invasion, right? It's an illegal annexation of territory, which if you were to put it in any other context, especially just as an example, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. would have called a war crime, right? A violation of international law. But in this context, when it comes to the U.S., because it's our best buddy Israel, we call this a new policy and an expansion of our defensive security forces into a sovereign country, right? They continue. They say, in a speech to Israeli military cadets, Netanyahu said that the IDF will remain inside of Syria, quote, indefinitely to protect our settlements and neutralize any threat. He says, let it be clear, we will not allow HTS forces or the new Syrian army to enter the area south of Damascus. He says, we demand the complete demilitarization of southern Syria in the Kunitra, I guess if I may be butchering the pronunciation of that, as well as the Daraa and the Suwaidia provinces from the forces of the new regime. So just to give you a perspective in terms of the map of the area that we're talking about here, this is going above and beyond the illegal occupation of the Golan Heights, which is supposed to be Syrian territory that Israel has been illegally occupying, that Trump de facto has allowed them to annex into their territory. But this is going even above and beyond that and extending it to the entire area south of Damascus. I mean, we're talking about what, like a quarter, half, close to, I don't know, of Syrian territory that Israel is just unilaterally saying, using this opportunity of weakness after years and years of civil war inside of Syria, knowing that the de facto Syrian government can't push back, they're just saying, we're basically not going to allow you to enter the area south of Damascus. This is a gigantic land grab that we're talking about here, guys. And as Netanyahu was just saying there, this is indefinite. This is not, oh, we're going to go and clear out some terrorist or whatever the fuck. They're just saying, no, we're just going to kind of occupy this for the foreseeable future as we continue to bomb inside of Syria, a place that has already been very thoroughly destroyed at this point. Now, we had reporting here, and I'll link this down below, from Murtaza Hussein of Dropsite News, breaking all of this down. He says, Israel has launched a major air assault now on Damascus as well. Israeli airstrikes and ground incursions threaten to destabilize Syria as it struggles to recover from a decade plus of civil war. So not only are we effectively saying, you guys cannot enter any area south of this point, but we're also going to bomb inside of Damascus itself. Now, we also have, at the same time as Israel is effectively doing what looks to be a gigantic land grab, sort of the greater Israel strategy inside of Syria, we also have them deploying tanks inside of the West Bank. So here from Al Jazeera, they say the Israeli military has launched several new raids across the occupied West Bank in intensifying a month-long operation that has killed hundreds of people and displaced thousands, Reports that the army is planning to open up military corridors in the West Bank suggested an extended and expanded campaign. So the International Committee of the Red Cross, the ICRC, raised alarm at the deteriorating situation, saying that winter weather was making it more difficult for displaced Palestinians to survive. They say, quote, that many people have fled their homes to take shelter, including in crowded mosques and schools. With many homes damaged or destroyed, people are struggling to access basic needs such as clean water, food, medical care, and shelter. So it looks like effectively, as we've had this tenuous Gaza ceasefire that Israel has been violating in a myriad of different ways, and we'll get to more of that here in a second, they've used this as an opportunity to go and amplify their illegal occupation and ethnic cleansing inside the West Bank. Now, keep in mind, we also have the background context of the Trump administration that's been in power for, a month or so at this point, that took $100 million from Miriam Adelson to effectively allow Israel to annex the West Bank entirely with U.S. backing and with U.S. support, or at least with U.S. oversight or looking the other way, let's say. And this is that plan coming into action here. We are witnessing it happen in real time as they continue to push in disproportionately, it looks like, into areas like Jenin that are currently being destroyed. So not only is it enough to, completely flatten Gaza to the ground, as Trump and Netanyahu have said, to put forward plans to fully ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip and to, I guess, put the U.S. in charge of it, or Israel in charge of it, or a coalition of countries in charge of it, to indefinitely expel the Palestinians there. But on top of that, they also have to push forward with basically these same strategies inside of the West Bank as well. Now, we also have some video here of Israeli settlers who are very frequently backed up directly by the Israeli occupation forces, who are going around to Palestinian families in the West Bank, throwing Molotov cocktails at houses during their attacks. This one specifically is in Jabba in East Jerusalem inside of the West Bank, and you can see some of the video of the aftermath of these attacks. And so this is kind of part of the strategy of settler colonialism, of ethnic cleansing, is you allow these radical far-right Israeli settlers, terrorists essentially, to go into the West Bank where Palestinians live, to terrorize them, to make their lives impossible. And then you have the Israeli security forces who come in and they say, okay, well, this is a dangerous area. Palestinians, you need to get out while we secure the region. And then moving forward, they only allow the Israeli settlers to come back to that area. I mean, it is an obvious playbook that's being used here, guys. And again, this is nothing new. This has been going on year after year after year. It's just that now it looks like they're sort of using this as an opportunity under the Trump administration to just bull rush it, to push forward, to steamroll as much as they possibly can right now. And there is, at this point, both in terms of Israel going into southern Syria, as well as going into the West Bank, there is zero pushback from the U.S. government, right? From Democrats, from Republicans. I haven't seen a single fucking word from any prominent Democrats, from any prominent Republicans, who are even commenting on the fact that Israel is demanding everywhere south of Damascus to be fully demilitarized and that they're going to move in, or the fact that they're sending tanks into the West Bank. Not a single word from U.S. media, from U.S. politicians. It's as if this isn't happening. And that's sort of the goal from them. Now, part of the other, sort of fucked up nature of all of this is that they used this recent bus bombing as part of the justification for amplifying their attacks in the West Bank. So here we had from CNN, Netanyahu orders West Bank military operation after Israel bus blasts. Now, you look a little bit deeper into this. So there were a couple of buses. Apparently they didn't have anybody on them. And I think one person maybe was killed or nobody was killed. But there were these bus bombings that took place inside of Israel. Netanyahu comes out. He uses this as a justification to amplify their attacks inside of the West Bank. Then we get some further reporting. Now, this is, I believe, from the Israeli Times, an Israeli outlet, pointed out here by Trita Parsi, that Shin Bet has now arrested 2 Israelis inside of Israel suspected of involvement in the Tel Aviv suburb bus bombings. So we may never get the full details of exactly what happened here, but the suspicion is that this was essentially a classic sort of like false flag operation here, where you have bus bombings, the buses that were bombed didn't really have anybody in them, and then you use that as an opportunity to justify continued amplified attacks on Palestinians, even though it was Israelis that are suspected of doing the bombings in the first place. Absolutely insane. Now, we also have here from Dropside in terms of the latest out of Gaza. They say that Hamas has halted negotiations until Israel frees the 620 prisoners that they were supposed to release as a part of the tenuous ongoing so-called ceasefire, even though it's not really a ceasefire because Israel has been, again, violating it over and over and over again. They're continuing to kill Palestinians inside of Gaza, but they say that senior Hamas official Mahmoud Mardari has announced that the group will not engage in further discussions with Israel through mediators until Israel releases the 620 Palestinian prisoners who were set to be freed last Saturday. Israel postponed the release, demanding assurances that Hamas will stop what it termed humiliating handovers of captives. And they also point out here that there was a recent video that was circulating online of a male Israeli captive who kissed two Hamas soldiers on stage as he was being released. So, I mean, it's just, it's a sick joke at this point, right? Again, we went over in previous videos the dozens of different times that Israel has violated this so-called ceasefire agreement, right? Now they're trying to say that, I guess, at least in part, that because there was a video of an Israeli captive who kissed on the forehead two Hamas, members as he was being released, that this was humiliating, and now we're going to use that as a justification to basically betray our end of the deal, and we're no longer going to release the hostages, Palestinian hostages, that we were supposed to release. Now, more background on this, is pointed out here by Ryan Grimm. He says the purpose of the last couple of days is clear. Israel launched an allegation of a complex cover-up against Hamas and is now using its own evidence-free assertion to pause the agreed-upon release of prisoners and once again throw the ceasefire into doubt. And what he's referring to here is like Israel is basically making the allegation. I've seen a bunch of different allegations. In one instance, we had this family, the Bibas family, Shiri, as well as her sons, Ariel and Kafir, who were released. Obviously, they were deceased, and they were released, their bodies were released back to Israel. And in this specific instance, Israel, as well as multiple U.S. government officials, accused Hamas of brutally murdering them, of executing them, when there is no evidence for that. And back, I think it was November of 2023, Hamas, or the Al-Quds forces had come out, or the Al-Qassam brigades had come out and said that these people had been killed in an Israeli airstrike. So this was reported a very long time ago. Now, doesn't excuse the fact that they took civilians and children as hostages. Obviously, that is a war crime. But the idea that you're going to say, without any evidence whatsoever, that they were brutally murdered, when the evidence actually points to them being killed in an Israeli airstrike inside of Gaza, and we know for a fact that many Israeli hostages have been killed by Israel's genocidal offensive inside of Gaza, the idea that you're going to use that as an opportunity to say now we can't continue with our side of the ceasefire agreement, it's kind of absurd, right? On top of that, again, as Ryan was pointing out here, it's very clear what the goal is here from Israel: to throw any wrench into the possibility of a sustainable ceasefire as possible. That's the goal, is to make it more and more difficult for this ceasefire to continue, right? So that they can, I guess, in some way justify either amplifying the offensive back into Gaza or to follow through with, who knows, Trump's plan to essentially ethnically cleanse everybody from Gaza. But the goal is very clear. They're not interested in any sort of long-term peace with Palestinians. Now, we also have here, also from Dropsite, Israeli Deputy Knesset Speaker calls for killing all Palestinian men in Gaza, as well as wiping out Jenin. This is Nissim Vaturi here, who said, quote, Who is innocent in Gaza? Civilians went out and slaughtered people in cold blood. We need to separate the children and women and kill the adults in Gaza. We're being too considerate. Think about all of the death and destruction, the bombing of hospitals and schools and mosques and churches and refugee camps and UN shelters and journalists and aid workers, children for that matter. And he's saying we're being too considerate with our policy in Gaza. We need to round everybody up, every adult in Gaza apparently, and wipe them out. This is the deputy Knesset speaker, essentially their Congress, right? He described the people in Gaza as, quote, scum and subhumans, claiming that, quote, no one in the world wants the civilians in Gaza. Everyone is pushing them into Israel. So I don't even know what he means by that. Is he claiming that Gaza is Israel and so they're being pushed into Israel by being in Gaza? What exactly do you mean by that? Now, he also says we will soon turn Jenin into Gaza. So I mean, keep in mind, he says, erase Jenin, don't start looking for the terrorists. If there is a terrorist in a house, take it out. So, I mean, they're openly admitting it. Again, what we were warning about in terms of the same policies, the genocidal policies that were used in Gaza, being now turned towards the West Bank. If you look at Israeli politicians, they just kind of openly say this shit. It's not difficult to figure out. I mean, the farthest left interpretation here in the United States, the most aggressive critic of Israel here in the United States, has been right over and over and over again in terms of their motives. If you don't want to listen to U.S. leftists or critics of Israel here in the U.S., just listen to what they're saying in Israel. They don't hide it. They don't make it difficult to figure out. They just openly say shit like this. Now, finishing off here, in terms of what the latest is here in the U.S., again, as they sort of just completely ignore the fact that Israel is annexing huge swaths of the West Bank, as well as potentially Gaza, as well as potentially Syria, we also have Trump over on Truth Social posting this video here.
Set you free, bringing the light for all to see. No more tunnels, no more fear. Trump Gaza is finally here. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza number one. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza number one.
So, I mean, Jesus Christ, guys. Again, the most aggressively hyperbolic leftist in warning about Trump, in warning about the U.S. and Israel's plan for Gaza, they might have even underestimated what the plan actually was. So you have like an AI-generated video here that Trump is posting on his official Truth Social account, where you start off with AI images of like a destroyed Gaza, people picking up some shit. It looks like they're picking up body parts out of the street or something. Children running through the rubble. And then you have this like transition to skyscrapers and palm trees and new buildings. And it looks like Elon Musk eating some like shepherd's pie here or something. You have, I don't even, is this like some sort of, I don't even want to get into what is going on in that video. You have a golden Trump head balloon that's being circulated. Again, like beachfront resort properties here. Trump dancing with some women with chandeliers in the background inside of Gaza. Elon throwing money in the air on a beach in Gaza. A Trump hotel in Gaza. Again, Elon, for some reason, a giant Trump statue and little figurines being sold. And then Trump with Netanyahu drinking on the beach in Gaza. This is what his plan is. I mean, like, you know, you can play it off and say, oh, maybe he's not serious about it or whatever, but I don't know how much more serious you can be when you're saying it over and over and over again. No, this is the plan. The plan is to fully ethnically cleanse Gaza. The plan is to fully ethnically cleanse the West Bank. It's to turn Jenin into Gaza, right? And to establish, according to the video he just fucking posted, some sort of a like US/Israeli resort on top of the dead bodies inside of Gaza. So, I mean, it's about as bleak and as dark as you could possibly imagine here. We also had this update that I'll just mention real quick out of New York in terms of the censorship that continues to happen here in the U.S. This time we have Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, who just ordered Cuny, C-U-N-Y, to remove the Hunter College Palestinian Studies job, calling for a probe into anti-Semitic theories, as pointed out here by Hassan Piker. The mayor of New York City is currently collaborating with the Trump admin, obviously talking about Eric Adams, we talked about that here on the channel, in a quid pro quo scheme allowing ICE to operate in New York City because Trump's DOJ dropped his previous quid pro quo scheme charges. Meanwhile, this is what the so-called liberal governor is busy with, eliminating education. So, I mean, just as a reminder, here in the U.S., right, you can be a professor and you can discuss the legacy of settler colonialism in the U.S., of apartheid in the U.S., but if you discuss those same topics when it comes to a foreign country, in this case, Israel, you could lose your job, right? We are going to virtue signal to the pro-Israel lobby, as Kathy Hochul is doing here, and say we don't even want a discussion as to how Israel is an apartheid state, as to the legacy and the ongoing reality of settler colonialism. You will lose your job by mandate from the governor of the state. And this comes on top of, obviously, a majority of Americans who are under state laws that are anti-BDS laws that are totally unconstitutional and say, you can boycott the US, you can boycott Germany, you can boycott Canada, you can boycott Mexico, but you can't boycott Israel. This is the kind of censorship. Obviously, with the Trump administration, we have a whole nother level added to that with him threatening to deport Palestinian protesters, but this is the length that we will go here in the United States to defend whatever Israel wants to do. So there you have it, guys. I mean, again, almost no coverage from this somehow here in the U.S. from mainstream media, as well as, in terms of statements from U.S. politicians. It's like they don't even give a shit enough to comment on the fact that Israel is now effectively annexing a huge chunk of Syria. They're rapidly escalating the ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. They're continuing to violate the ceasefire agreement inside of Gaza. And you have a president in Trump who's threatening to build like Trump fucking hotels on the beaches of Gaza. Absolutely despicable shit.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me. Everyone is saying